Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show that you never thought would reappear. It is once again time for Duke's Conspiracy Corner. And I've been hunting around for a long time trying to find somebody that could help me out do this show and that knows a lot about the subject matter, hopefully in excess of what I know. And guess what? I found them. And I actually convinced them to come and work with me on this one. So for the first episode, this is, by the way, the new co-host of Conspiracy Corner. And for this one, we're going to be talking about stuff that is going on over in his neck of the woods that is highly alarming. But before we get to that, let me introduce the main man from KX Kryder Explorations, the real world Indiana Jones, who also finds Sasquatch when they get too close to his archaeological stuff. Rob Kryder, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
I'm thrilled to have you here with me because now we can cover some of the massive pile of information that you've accrued over years and years and years. And like I told you coming into this, the first thing I wanted to start out with is something that other people in other parts of the country outside of your local area may not have heard about. And that is the kind of strange interference that's going on with funding for universities and stuff to be able to get out there in the field and do anything.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things, money's not allotted for science and discovery unless it fits a certain picture, basically.
So you're saying it's kind of agenda driven?
Yeah, I mean, it's only agenda driven, and that's the deal. So if you have a biologist and they're going to go study something that intrigues or fits in the curriculum, so to speak, it's not hard to get funding. Like for the Billy Chimp. It took them a year to get a single video that basically equals a fleeting glimpse video that we've got from Sasquatch many times. And this was a fully sponsored deal. We're a full year in the field, never going in, a year concentrating with equipment, with funding, with resources. And they're the first one, able to get just a fleeting glimpse of a head and a face through the bushes turning and running. And basically not a clear image at all. And then later, through the months and years following, of course, they did good. But when we look at, with the Bigfoot enigma, and we're talking about research funding and research money and what it takes to go out and get a video of any kind, if it takes a year to get a Billy Chimp on film in a fleeting glimpse, then why would we expect anyone to be able to do this in a weekend without extreme funding? And that's one of the reasons we're looking at why does it take so long to get this information and these videos to the people,
Well, that even the people that have the wherewithal to get out there and spend enough time to get anywhere near these guys, generally they don't have good equipment. So if they do film it, it's like something like a potato with a lens on it. And everybody goes, oh, why don't you have better video of it? It's like, because I don't have a budget. I spent all my money on gas to get out here, and I didn't think I was going to find anything anyway.
Yeah.
Because mostly you don't. So yeah, there's the peculiarity of this interference, ongoing interference with what's should be no issue to get funding for people to go out and do research, but there seems to be this agenda behind what they're allowing funding to go to and what they're not allowing it to go to.
Yeah, and I mean, and not just in academia, like I just mentioned, it goes into the private sector as well. So let's say that you and I want to go research blue whales, let's say, right? Well, what if we do that? We could sell T-shirts, we could hold raffles, we could have a funding drive, we could have parades, we could do whatever. And you could put barrels out there and they could fill with cash. And if it was for blue whales, well, nobody would have a problem with it. Or anything else in the ocean, dolphins or whatever. Well, if we were going to go, we would have a private deal. We want to go count spotted owls. No problem. We would count spotted owl T-shirts. Boy, everybody would ramp on it, buy all the T-shirts, it'd be the greatest thing in the world. So a Bigfoot researcher, says, I need to make a little cash so I can go do research so I can give the results to the world and further the understanding for humanity. I need to sell some T-shirts. Oh my gosh, no. He's a complete charlatan. You just, get him out of here. He's a farce. He's a hoax. He's he's greedy. He's doing it for the money. Now, however that ever got injected or however it infiltrated this enigma is mind-blowing. You can sell Nessie t-shirts to help fund your Nessie research in the lock, and no one has a problem with it. You can have private companies selling Bigfoot stuff. There's tons of Bigfoot t-shirts that are out there by t-shirt companies. Not a dime of that ever goes anywhere toward Bigfoot. It's just privateers profiting off the enigma. Yet if a researcher tries to fund his own research by selling t-shirts, he's now a charlatan and he's taking everybody for a ride. It doesn't make any sense. And the people in the Bigfoot world are all like that, and they're staunch like that, and they feel fine with it, and they feel vindicated, like this is the position to have. This is the position to have. Well, why this position to have just with Bigfoot? Have you ever asked yourselves that out there in public land? We should be doing whatever we can to support the efforts of the people that are in the field and going in the field that are getting us results, or at least trying. And continually what we see happening is from Patreon support to the big social platform support, whether it be views, whatever, it doesn't matter. But these go to people generally who are doing this as a hobby. They go hiking and they look for Bigfoot evidence as they hike. They don't primarily just go look for the evidence. There's a couple ways to do this. And I understand why people don't want to pay for, let's say, Bigfoot research. What does most Bigfoot research for most researchers entail? Pulling up to a campground in a pickup, unloading your pickup at a picnic table, setting up your tent, building a 3-foot fire. Everyone sits around the fire and exchanges stories, and you hope like hell something shows up or bangs or howls or hoots, and then everyone goes and knocks on trees, and they all kind of split up and go a few hundred feet from camp, and they holler and they hoot and they record each other. Or like we just heard, no offense to the BFRO, but this is a fact. We just heard they had gone up in a place and at one point put glow sticks on all the women and had them go in a place, play music and dance, basically as bait. To me, if you have to do something like that, you're desperate. I mean, those are acts of desperation and it's not anyone's fault, I guess, but because you don't know what to do, you don't know how to go out there and get to a Bigfoot. So you have to hope like hell you can do anything in the world, from hanging dead fish to playing, Mozart in the woods.
Putting out pheromone chips.
Yeah, but all the above. You've got to do all these things to try to bait them, which is the biggest insult in the world. And, if we can pick up on, why people are in our living room, they can pick up on why we're out in the forest. And if we're out there with the attitude, oh, I'm going to bait them in by making a big ruckus, that's just an insult, like literally. First off, maybe if you'd go out there and just respect them as a tribe, talk to them and wait. And if they don't come, well, you didn't come. Why push it? If you treat them with that kind of respect, you probably get a lot more results. But my point being is this is where people believe the funding will go. And it's true. I don't think I would want to pump money into somebody's project or someone's Patreon or whatever, just to pay them to go hike and continually film as an unknowing witness. I would, however, love to support research that was going out trying to put something together that was quantifiable, that compiled data, that we gained understanding through. I think that's great. So I think it's almost like a little conundrum in the Bigfoot field. But I think the first place to break that is why, and even all cryptids, I guess, but primarily Bigfoot, is let's stop this mess because if a person wants to get his research covered by the people who are benefiting from it, whether through entertainment or information, maybe methodology, maybe they're learning something, maybe it's just biding their time, they're the ones that are benefiting from this. And it's perfectly fair, I believe, for private researchers with good intent to ask for some of that. And I think that the people watching, they kind of owe a responsibility. If they can help, I think that they should. When somebody sells you a T-shirt, let's say a T-shirt sells $24. If they make $8 or $10, they're really lucky. Because you have not only the cost of the shirt, the cost of the printing, you have the shipping, and if it's not drop shipped, they have to get it shipped to them and then reship it. So the amount of time and effort it takes just to get these things done to get a few bucks to put in the gas tank, which now look how much it costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to get out to your favorite spot, let's say it's 2 or 3 hours away. Well, you're looking at 40, $60 in fuel. Well, you got to sell 6 T-shirts just to pay for your gas, let alone what am I going to eat out there for the day? And how many AA batteries am I going to go through?
Yeah.
And all the other expenditures that go along with this type of stuff. So, buying a few T-shirts off a guy is certainly, I don't believe, he's a charlatan trying to rip everybody off, especially these days. But
well, the guys that are doing the actual boots on the ground, butts in the field research, that gets expensive, and it gets expensive fast. And I just had Kelly Shaw from Rocky Mountain Sasquatch on the last show, and he quoted me the exact number. And he said, look, this is, I love doing it, and I'm out there doing it as much as I can, but this is a very expensive hobby. It cost me close to 20 grand a year just to do all the driving around and filming we do, and I ain't getting nearly that much back from doing it. It's costing me money to go out and do this.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say out of all the products we've sold, we have some pretty expensive equipment, and there's a pretty good markup, although it is labor intensive to put the stuff together because it's not coming off a manufacturing line. But that being said, there's no way I've ever touched expenditure, not a tenth. And I mean, the best we've ever done, not a tenth. If I go back 10 years, I haven't touched, a tenth of 1%, if that, 1,000th is what that is. And I know I haven't touched even that. It gets extremely expensive. I know we dumped $7 grand on the year that we did the UNM study just on doing the UNM stuff. And that's not the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. If I was to calculate time, we're looking at $100 grand a year. Because some of us don't do this as a hobby. We don't have another job. Basically, this is this research and enigmatic studies, and this is what we do. And we'd love to say, oh, we do it for a living, but you can't make a living at it. No. So basically, we do anything possible to pay for this, and then try to keep the lights on and the kids fed.
Yep. And I'm in the same position too. I'm legally fully disabled. Over 12 years ago, I was in a wheelchair most of the time, and I rehabilitated myself to the point where I could walk with a cane. Now I can walk without a cane, but not for too very far. Right. And I have to wear an ankle brace when I'm walking around in the mountains, because if I step the wrong way, there goes my leg, and I'm done.
Right.
So it's still, there's limits on it, but at least I can get out there and do it, and I love doing it. But I'm not getting paid for any of it, and I survive on disability barely.
Right.
So, and people are like, why aren't you filming more, Duke? Well, give me more money. I'll go out there and film more.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. That so earlier when you were talking about, we got on this funding thing kind of off the cameras. Why don't you see good footage and this and that? And it's the fear, and it's the funding, and it's the money. But I'll be honest with you, none of these modern digital cameras, besides the extreme high level cameras, are ever going to give us anything better than a blurry image if we zoom it in. Period. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's 4K. The way that information is interpolated and put down, it just doesn't matter. It's never going to be clear unless you're in the most optimum 1 in a million. So you could even have the best camera there is, and the chance that fleeting glimpse is going to come when you have the camera in your hand, ready to record, already up, going the whole 9 yards, and you happen to catch it. That is about the best you can hope for, even with the best equipment, unless you're super good. I mean, I believe we're probably as good as anybody in the field, and that's how it is. The glimpses are fleeting, they're quick. We have got them to stare at us and things at range, but of course, then again, that's at range. You're not most nature journalists or photographers, they have some really extreme equipment. A 300 millimeter lens is nothing for these guys. You're talking three times that. Lenses that are 2.5, 3 feet of lens to get these spectacular shots of animals, where these are animals that are not ultra shy of humans. To get a half mile from an animal and then video that animal without anything in between you and that animal, for one, in any given half mile of country with coverage, Well, that's just impossible because there's no straight half mile unless you're in a big pasture, right?
Right.
So what's going to stand out in the pasture with you with no obstruction to get that half mile shot? So even if you have this giant gear, now how are you going to rough hike? And so people think, oh, hiking, rough hiking, Forest Service trails and they got rocks. No. Just be on your favorite trail, go up the roughest canyon you can, and just turn 90 degrees and start walking a straight line. You're not allowed to go around anything except the trunks of trees. And then tell me how convenient that is to walk. Then try to carry some of those camera rigs. And these guys are sitting, 6-7 hours knowing where the animals are, tripods, big rigs, all this. You're not carrying any of that into rugged places. Let alone if you've got to rappel, mountain bike, or do anything else to get into these places to do this, or extreme distances. Sure, man, these guys pack cameras, I know, all over the planet, and it's amazing. But
how fast can you get that camera up and get it in focus, though? You got maybe 2 or 3 seconds
at the max. Yeah, right, max. So it's just like the billy chimp thing. How many naturalists and nature photographers that have gone through the Congo photographing nature with these big tripods and cameras? I mean, thousands collectively over time. People say, oh, it's largely unexplored, and that's true, but that doesn't mean for lack of effort or lack of people doing it.
Trying.
There's been lots of people out there with badass radical cameras. Not one of them ever got a picture of Billy Chimp. The girl that did finally, after a year in the bush, fully funded by universities and academia, pulled it off with a little camera, which is why they had no more better footage than we do of Bigfoot until they knew so much more about them and were able to do that. And that's kind of, habitual stuff because, I believe that if they still hadn't been used to a person after a full year, they probably still never would have got close enough to put a good camera on them. Yeah. Now they interact with mirrors and they're doing all kinds of other stuff with the billy apes. But it just goes to show that the largest chimp ever discovered basically is out there, and we have no clue, can't get a picture of it. There's no pro journalist taking a shot of it and all this other stuff. So even if you have a decent budget, you can go buy a $3,000 camera. You're not going to get a clear picture with a $3,000 camera. So why anyone expect to with a $300 camera? I have no clue. If you're not spending 10, 12, 15, 16, 18, 30, 40, $50,000 for a camera, 50 grand for a red is nothing. By the time you put the parts on it, you're looking at $250,000 for the cameras that people see that things on TV are being filmed. And they have even the stuff out in the field. Who's got $250,000 to throw down on a camera? And then that camera, you can't have it ready in 2 or 3 seconds. You can't just pick it up and start filming. Yeah. It's not like that.
You're gonna be climbing up a cliff with one of these big studio cameras on your shoulder, right?
They'd have to float you with the balloon, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, because you're gonna have both hands on that thing. You're not crawling through the brush. You're not going through anything. Somebody releases a branch on it and just whacks all your crap out of whack. I mean, it's almost ludicrous to assume that with digital videography and photography that we're ever going to get, what I believe some people have already got, controversial wise or not. There are some good pictures out there. Some of them are with film from back in the day, and in my opinion, your best bet is to go out with a film camera with extremely high quality, fine grain film and shoot them, because you're going to still blow away the highest meg digital camera has ever been created. People don't realize that, the silver grain that's inside of a hyperfine emulsion is 1,000 times finer than the best digital camera you could buy in the world. You could end up with a million grains across a pixel band. They're that's what we're looking at, is the grains of silver that are in that emulsion and how fine those can be. Well, they can be just so many atoms if you want a fine grain emulsion like that. so you're looking at resolutions, you know, the equivalent to what? A 25,000 megapixel camera, a 50,000 megapixel camera instead of a 10 or 16 or 24. And we think, oh, I got a 32, that's badass. Man, compared to film, that's nothing. I mean, nothing. And these, you know, a 70s box camera, you can actually get the resolution that you can with the 16 meg camera. So this is part of it as well, you know. And a lot of that is basically the funding issue again. It's like, and then the technical expertise. I could rent a Red. I can't run one. By the time I learn to operate one proficiently enough to take it in the field and get good results, well, that's a career. You know, I could literally go get a job as a cinematographer somewhere on a movie set. This is, so you're talking, there's such a gap there. That's not just funding, it's technological know-how. What's that come down to? Funding. You know, basically you got to hire a man that's a pro with a pro camera. What's that going to cost you a day? You know, $2,500, $3,000 a day to have a guy go with you just in case something pops up for a 3-second blast, right? So, yeah, I believe we need to truly open the doors and get the competent researchers the kind of funding they require, man, and put out a lot more public information about why, how, and the reality of this, you know, and point out that fact that, hey, why isn't academia dumping the money that they should into this? They're the ones that have the resources to pull this off. They have the field biologists and things to do it, you know, yet they're never going to stick them with a competent researcher so this can get done, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, and if you look at where some of the money's going federally too, they just had a big stink about that in Washington a few weeks ago, where one of the prominent people there was reading off a list of ridiculous things they're funding, like, oh, we got $3 million to see if gerbils get horny when you give them cocaine.
yeah.
Like, what? You're
Yeah.
wasting money on that, but you won't spend a penny on something that we got plenty of evidence does actually exist, and is still theoretically undocumented. What's up with that?
Yeah, if I had the money that they probably spent just to check and see how yogurt reacts to Beethoven, this would be done already. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And the other thing is the whole
ahead.
thing that this comes around a lot, that there aren't people out there producing viable evidence. Oh yes, there are. Nobody's paying any attention to it.
Exactly.
I got a piece of video last summer where I was walking along, not paying any attention to what's over here, which it turned out was a really big Sasquatch laying on the ground behind a fallen log with its head peeking up looking at me. And I took a crop from that and I shared it with one of my friends, and unbeknownst to me, he shared it to somebody that was in military intelligence, you know, that looks at the video and pictures and stuff. And he got back to him about a day later and said, "Where did you get this from?" And he said, "It's from a film clip from one of my friends. Can I see the video?" Yeah, so he looked at that. And a day later, he got back to him again. And he said, "So what did you decide?" And he goes, "It's not a rock. It's not a stump. It's an animate object. I don't know what the hell that is." That was his analysis.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty sketchy, man. I mean, it's all the way around. It gets bothersome to be a field researcher that gets evidence and tries to collect it in a quantifiable manner and tries to format it as best as possible, and then watch the not just stage time, but the public attention and that public want for the information, that yearning, that hope that they ride on, all that being focused on individuals who are not doing this, man. They're the ones camping around the fire. Yep. And
hanging on trees, hooping and hollering.
And I don't mean to put anybody down, but when I start looking at the conferences and things like that, and I look at how we're brushed over personally, and it would sound like someone's contemptuous or jealous or whatever, and it's really not. What becomes is frustrating for the people who do this for the reason to bring the truth to the people, watching those who do this for attention
and money.
Get the attention, because the attention is what you need to bring it to the people. Mm-hmm. So if anyone gets upset about who's on stage, well, other people say, "Oh, well, that's just not you, and you're upset about that." Well, I am upset about that because I have something to show them. I've got something to say, and so it's kind of like, you're in a line of 1,000 people and you're the one that can sing like crazy, and you've got the judges on the stage, and they're going to allow a random number of people to approach the stage that day, and you have to get in line and hope you make it there. Well, there's a frustration in that they are looking for that one person, and that one person can give them what they're looking for. But the system that's set up leaves that one person so buried in the line and so far back that the auditions are over long before they ever get there. Mm-hmm. And so, in other words, the spots for the conferences, the spots for the speaking positions, things like that, are filled immediately, mostly by people who like to talk about other people's research. But the people that are going, all of them lie on, they want to see research, they want to see answers, they want to see results, and they want to see these things coming to light. They want to see the data. They want to know what side these things sleep on. That's the thing, is they're looking for that. And so, but the people that are parked in the positions to give it to them don't have that information, but they continually show up because of the hope of the people watching. But there's a filter there. The people that can answer those questions, that can bring what the people are actually hoping for, are not being allowed to share that stage, or not being allowed to share that time. And I'm watching this is pretty prolific. I mean, it's really, really prolific. Like, there's a lot of names that are going around in the field that I have no idea who these people are. I've never seen a shred of anything contributed to the enigma, to the understanding of the enigma. I've never seen a research methodology introduced and shared with the people to help them formulate their own research. I've never seen them come up with bases for understanding the creature. You know what I mean? Like habits and repetitive things.
Patterning it, just like any other animal.
Yeah, and I've never seen them do any of this. And yet they're the ones on stage. Yet there are a select group out there who are putting boots to the ground, and as well, who are good speakers, and they're perfectly capable of presenting quantifiable evidence to these people. And that's what the people want to see. So it seems like, the attention whores ran up, oh, me first, and they were all ran up on stage, and the crowd's going, but wait, we want to see the stuff that other guy's got over there. No, don't you see me? I'm in front of him. I've got a, I got a badge, or I got a whatever. Yeah. And so we got to peel this open somehow, because the whole point is to what? To enlighten, right? The whole point is disclosure. The whole point is the age of awakening. This is when we get to break the veil. This is when we get the understandings we've all yearned for. Well, that's not going to happen just watching people on stage wave their arms back and forth. Oh. And so, we need to crack this. I was asked today, how come they haven't had you on Skinwalker? And especially since we've already dealt everything they've ever shown on Skinwalker Ranch, we've already run across more than once in the field in the last 20 years, and researched it, worked on it, and have a lot of answers for a lot of that stuff. And we're public. They know who we are. We researched on invitation just over their fence. We picked up readings beyond what they're registering with better equipment. We did Bigfoot research there and found tracks and found hair, and we're able to do the whole 9 yards right over their fence. Yet throughout all these seasons and seasons and seasons, you're seeing things that are being looked at that necessarily, well, they're kind of a normal part of what we do. Yet we've never been talked to. And they ask us, how come Skinwalker Ranch's guys have never asked you to do it? And I have no idea. We've been in contact. We've made offers. And I understand there's tons of people out there that go, oh, yeah, I've got theories and I'd love to be on there. And that's not really what we are. But when you see guys on a research team like that on TV and they're posing questions you have the answer to, or when they're doing research all bewildered that you've already done several times on several locations, you'd think that that type of person would be involved. And here would come the answers, and here would come the, but there's where that wall lies, is in the same thing. So.
Well, one comment on what you were saying earlier, and that's like, there's a difference between researchers trying to fund themselves and what's going on at the conference circuit right now, which from my standpoint is product placement. This
Yeah.
isn't about presenting evidence. It's about product placement and making money. And the people that seem to be grabbing most of the attention, the real attention whores that are going to every conference and trying to get in line first and generally can do it,
Hmm.
are the same ones that either have a movie or a book they're trying to sell.
Well, I mean, and this is the deal. So you'll notice on TV that most of the shows have authors. And I've no disrespect to authors, man. They got all my admiration because I would love to put together a few books out of what I've got, but I'm not an author, and I will do it eventually. It'll probably be obvious I'm not an author. But the point being is the shows do the same thing. They base themselves, and they're propped up by the hopes of the people who want answers. Authors generally write about other people's answers, and so people want to hear it from the source. They don't want to hear some guy's interpretation about this guy and this guy and this guy and what he found.
Yeah.
You know, that's great that they do that. But what we end up with is the opinion of people who have no experience is what states the parameters for the enigma. So, you know, that's a Bigfoot track. No, that's not a Bigfoot track. Spoken by a person who's never found a Bigfoot track. Sure, he's got hundreds of casts, and he's seen lots, and he's studied and a doctorate in that science. But at the same time, he's never seen the evidence of what makes those things. He's never found one himself. So there is experience that needs to be quantified. So if a real witness says, "Man, I watched this thing. We got its tracks. Here's some hair. Here's 100 steps in a trackway," and they cast, the few that they think is best. Well, the lab guy gets to see the few. He doesn't get to see a true representation of what the animal does, leaves, how often it took a full print. Because what people do is they take the print that looks like a Bigfoot print because they don't want the one that doesn't to show, because someone's going to, under those parameters that the pro who's never been out there states qualifies or disqualifies. Based on that, he's not going to show you the rest of the prints, because you're going to say, "Oh, well, that's not a Bigfoot because A, it's got an arch, B, it's got a thin heel, C, it's over 18 inches. Whatever these defining terms that are set down by people who don't know, right? They're actually filtering out what we see. So even the lab guy's not going to get the rest of the prints. He's not going to get things that are not indicative of what he himself represents. So you see this catch-22. So are we seeing the diversity of a Bigfoot print? No, we're not. But the man out there who tracked the 100 prints, he does. He knows better than anyone else in the world what the potential for that foot to do is. Yet we have lab guys telling him, literally telling him, "No, that's impossible." And, and here's an example. One time I took photographs of 2 prints, and I put them up to everybody. And everybody across the board said one was absolutely, that's a Bigfoot. It shows every single sign. It's flat-footed. It's got the pinch in the middle from the mid-tarsal break. You can see the way it was planted, the heel, the width, everything. It's perfect. And then the other print, they said, "No, that's a person. Look, it shows what looks like an arch. It's not flat-footed. It stepped in a cup form. The toes kicked and all this other stuff." And I mean, people were adamant. You could get people to fight over them. It's the same foot from the same subject, from the same trackway, 20 feet apart in the same substrate. And under the pro's determination, one of the photographs showed traits that were 100% BF. On the other photograph, the same foot left a print that showed traits that were disqualified as a BF based on their parameters, which means their parameters are completely wrong. Their defining and validating factors are completely askew. But do they know that? Because if I was most people, would I have cast the print that looks like a person's print and taken it into them to look at? No, probably not, because he's already turned me off on that. You see what I'm saying? So the people that know are not getting to speak, and the people that don't know are running their mouth and chiming. But that would actually be fine, except they're giving limiting factors. If it's over 18 inches, it's fake.
You know, that's
It's
an old Taoist adage: those who speak do not know, and those who know do not speak.
right, or not allowed to speak in this
Yeah,
world,
in this case, not allowed to
right?
speak.
A lot of them want to talk, but they're, yeah, because I mean, how can you say, oh, if it's over 18 inches, it's probably fake? Um, tell the guy who tracked it, who saw the animal, and then went over there and found the prints, that it's fake. He knows the difference. He knows what's going on, right? And then when you take normal diversity in species and you say, oh, well, that's fake and that's real because every print looks like this, man, there's not anything looks like this. And especially when you get into primates and the higher primates and the closer to human you get, the more diversity you get. You can look at people today who have club feet. Their toes are straight across, and you can look at other people who their second toe is
Longer than
a lot
hallux.
longer. It looks like a finger, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you've got guys in Africa where the whole tribe only has 4 toes, and they're split like a chameleon's hand, and they can pick up a Pepsi bottle, and pour it. If you really want to go to the outside of this thing, so you have to ask yourself eventually, why would anyone make the determination that, well, 18 inches, that's it? Why would anyone make the determination they can't have a narrow heel? They can't have a tapered toe structure.
It's so bad that I know somebody that actually is known for a long time that Sasquatch are real, and he was out camping in the Wallowa Mountains in Washington, elk hunting, I think, at the time, and he found this track, and he looked at it and went, well, that's a mud puddle. That can't be a track. It's too big. What I think are toes there are actually elk prints. And then he looked a little bit forward about another 10 feet, and there was another one. He looked back behind him about 12 feet, there was another one. So he went 3, 4 more up ahead of him, and there was a swamp that whatever it was had walked into. And you could see the potholes in the swamp where it had taken steps about every 10, 12 feet. And he went, I don't know what that is, but I'm not going in there because its tracks are closer to 3 feet long than 2 feet long. But initially, when he saw it, the first thing he defaulted to is, that's an optical illusion. It can't be a real track because it's too big.
Yeah. Well, even a 23-inch track's like that.
Yeah. Well, I know. I found a 21-inch 3 in a row. And I was like, is the foot sliding here or something? And no, they're just 21 inches long.
Right. That's what, when, we put this thing up, I'll go ahead and drop a picture or two, because the toes on the 23-inch tracks, when we finally found them in the big male, the toes were as big as each side of a cow hoof. So you're looking over 2.5 inches wide each toe. And so let me make a note here. Thanks. So, when I looked down on them, standing right on top of them, I didn't identify the whole print. Plus the substrate wasn't great. Nothing else even would have left a print. It wasn't that heavy. And, but Bob was able to see it from about 30 feet away at my feet. And I was looking down because I could see that there was impressions there, but I was trying to tell myself they were a cow, even though there was no other cow tracks right there. And Bob said, God, those are huge prints. And it didn't, about a half a second, and I snapped. And I looked, and looked, and oh my God, these are the toes. That's the 2 toes in front. Those aren't a hoof print. Those are the toes. And then you back up in your mind and you see the whole print. But my main point is, the limiting factor. It's like, who in the world is to say, how big the feet are going to get? I mean, I know in all the years we've done it, there's been a max, and what we've seen at the max is very, very old guys. They're old adults, the grayed out and missing teeth and things like that. The feet are never as heavy and robust as the smaller, younger subjects. 15, 17, 18-inch tracks, whatever, usually real heavy and robust. And the big tracks we've seen, the 22, 23-inch tracks, those are usually look like basically they're feet of an old man. And so, and we've never seen I've never seen anything bigger than 23 yet. I've heard a lot of tales around it. I haven't personally seen a photograph that was definitive as a track that was that big. I've seen depressions that were cast that were in a line. But we feel there's probably an upper size to these things for sure, but to limit them at 18 inches is like, man, that's not even a big one. you know, and I know why. It's because they want to limit the potential height to 8 to 9 foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I know why that is too, because they're trying to perpetuate this as a big monkey. So,
Uh-huh.
and that's as big as science is going to allow that big monkey's feet was. So they're
Well,
not.
the other thing is they don't want to admit there's something the size of an elephant running around the woods, Rob. I mean,
No.
that's kind of extremely scary to most people.
Yeah, I mean, we estimated the weight, and people say, "Oh, you're full of crap. Nothing's that heavy." Man, whatever. So, but we estimate probably around 3,000, a little over, on a 12-foot male. So you're talking 3,000 pounds.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, according to
It
our
is.
weight guesstimates, and we've got a cubic cc conversion from what a human of that height, build, and structure would weigh, and it's scaled up. It's skinny to stocky, and there's intermediaries in between. How tall is it? If they have
Right.
the same density as a human, that's how much they'll weigh. So
Right.
we've got those numbers, and you're absolutely right. If you're talking about something that big, we were trying to figure out what Glag weighed, because last sighted it, he was a little bit over 14 feet, and that's the same thing it came in at. He was over 1.5 tons easily.
Well, yeah, because it's not even that hard to figure. If you take a guy who's 5'10" and he can weigh 150, 160 pounds, and then you take a guy 6'10", his same build will go over 400.
Mm-hmm.
So more than 1 foot additional. So 1/5 added, and the weight will over double. And so if you're talking, if you double the person, your weight can go up considerably more. We figured 3,200 pounds.
Yeah.
Would be scaled up, an average size, athletic, good muscular guy, not even a behemoth, but an average sized, athletic, big muscular guy. We weigh about 3,200 pounds at 12 foot tall.
Yeah.
When we looked at the female at GLST, we can see in her picture that, I'm going to make a note of this. We can see in her picture that her leg will fit 2 people. So you can go, oh, well, it's a guy in a 10-foot costume. But what I'm saying is 2 guys could fit in 1 leg of her costume. Then you could put 2 guys in the other leg. You could put 4 people in the torso, and you could just about put a guy inside each arm. That's what it would take to fill her suit, and she's like 10.5 foot. The 12-footers, way more than twice her mass. So it's like if you have an 8-foot can, like you're going to drill and you got a stem, you got an 8-foot can, and then you have a 10-foot can. Well, you think, oh, well, that's only 2 feet bigger. It's actually twice the volume.
Mm-hmm.
Twice the volume. People don't realize that. They don't think about it that way. And when you have something 12 feet tall, even at 10 foot tall, like I said, 6 people, you could put 6 people inside of her to fill the costume. So it's not some guy in a 10-foot tall suit. Sorry, people, look at it. The hips are 40 inches across the hips.
These guys get really massive too. I caught one accidentally last summer when I was on top of a promontory by myself filming, and I just kind of turned back like this and then turned back around. About 35, 40 feet behind me, there was one that I can't guarantee exactly how tall he is until I go back there and scale it up, but his nose is about the size of my head. His head's about the size of a beach ball. So he was big.
Yeah, beach ball, yeah. So, yeah, the biggest we've seen the head on, its eyes were, its head was, and I'll put it in scale to my head here because of forced perspective. Giant head. But its head was about this big, and its eyes were about that big.
That's big.
3 to 4 inches between the eyes, and the eyes were about as big as I could make with my hand, like that. Yeah. So really, and that one was the one J.C. Johnson, George, Jack, and all those guys got to see up there, and Farmington or Fruitland up there on the San Juan River. And that's the big male that I crawled in with, and he was actually a pretty docile guy. He grunted at me, and that's the one that hit me and made me puke for a couple of days. But he wasn't aggressive. I just made him a little nervous, and yeah, I got to see him from like 15 feet and laying down, and he was a good 6 foot across the shoulders, from shoulder to shoulder, 6 feet long.
So he's probably what, 10 foot tall?
Yeah, or bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's probably a little bit bigger. Yeah, yeah, he had to be. And so when people look at that, what I used to do is tell them, you can't even imagine really what it's like. So you take a 6-foot stick and stick it on top of somebody's head, and then step back and then put the frame of a massive weightlifter in that
Over that.
spot. And yeah, it's just people can't even get a grip, I don't believe. Yeah, and I kind of I'm going to bring up our upcoming expedition too. So we're planning, and we're hardcore in the planning right now. We're running it through quick. Going to revisit the lodge and kill zone at high altitude that we found, and it's all males like that. That's everybody up there is big boy like that. So it's like all the big males hanging out together. And we finally got a team put together, 6 people right now, who are very qualified, very experienced, kind of hardcores. And first, it's been taking 5 years to basically get a team together that'll go in there and document it. So we're early May sometime. We're planning on doing that.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I'm hoping maybe at some point this summer, if you get the chance to get you up here to go take a look at where those megaliths are here in Montana too. Those things are very interesting looking. Having camped there overnight, and while we were there were several Sasquatch watching us, which wasn't what we were there for. So we were kind of like trying to ignore them.
Right.
We're here to look at megaliths. You guys go away. Quit spying on camp.
Well, it goes together. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, in this area we're going to go, actually, the outer escarpment has cliffs that are 3,000 and 4,000 foot verticals in places, a lot of 1,000-foot verts, and its faces are heavily monumented, a lot like the stuff up there. So just dozens and dozens and dozens of megaliths up there. And even like under one big giant dolmen that's probably about a rock 30 by 40 by 20, which is probably 3,000 tons, something like that, that's placed on 3 other rocks. And then underneath it is the spiral, the labyrinth of Knossos, or labyrinth of Knossos, which is the old, looks like the Celtic maze. It goes up and it goes around and goes back around. So that's actually the labyrinth of Knossos, and that's what that symbol is. And we have that cut underneath one of these big ones over here. It's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of evidence toward this may have been constructed because someone took the time to carve something in. You know.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, we see the evidence people from Libya. Like there's the ancient Libyans. They don't even know who they were. There's none of them left. But they have some of their dwellings and they have their writings and stuff. And we see the same stuff in the Southwest. And actually, I think we have a better rendition of that culture in the Southwest USA than they do in Libya, which is pretty interesting.
What's left of it anyway. Well, yeah. Areas that tend to get word over a lot, that kind of history tends to disappear after a while. Next culture comes in. What's this garbage? I don't know. Blow it up.
Right. Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Oh, they didn't exist. Get rid of that stuff. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. That wall in Texas isn't buried under the ground there for 40 miles either. It doesn't exist. Ignore that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so let's get back to your little region over there now. I know that there was some weird maneuvering with state and or federal forces to try and preclude any funding going toward Bigfoot research, although they spend funding on all kinds of other weird stuff.
Yeah, what happened with that was when we did the UNM study, who I'm going to say that also one of the big pro in the Bigfoot world was involved in that as well, and doesn't tell anyone or ever mention whatsoever about that involvement. But when that concluded, we did a presentation of the results to the faculty and to students as well, and we even opened up to the public. And we had the Navajo elders came in and even sat down for the first time in history.
Yes.
And related their words, their language, their understanding of them, the whole 9 yards. They sat down and they presented all that. And for some reason, the famous doctor of Bigfooting was given during the initial study was given our DNA evidence, and it was actually partially at my advisement to do that, but it was instructed not to. And the reason, and I just didn't say his name just directly because I'm not trying to call anybody out. Everyone that knows anything will figure it out pretty quick. But anyway, he was given the DNA evidence, and it was pretty substantial. It collected from a lot of places during a university study, not just people contributing it. And he gave it to the same person who blocked the Oxford study. And we had explicitly told him, you give it to any domestic laboratory, split it up between a couple domestic labs, nothing gets shipped overseas, nothing goes to this particular person, who was Brian Sykes. And when a year later, we hadn't got a phone call back from our doctor of Bigfoot, Mr. Pro, he wouldn't return any calls to the executive director of University of New Mexico Gallup on what's the results, where did the DNA go, what do we do, what's the next step, what's the trace of custody. And so we actually invited him to present at the conference to the faculty for the results of the Bigfoot study. And he did a presentation basically on Gigantopithecus and the potential for it to have come across the Bering Straits on the land bridge. But no word about anything else having to do with the study. And that morning, the morning of the conference, the second morning of the conference, we actually sat him down at breakfast and asked him, hey, where the hell did the DNA go? The executive director of the university himself did. And he just said, I don't know. And it's like, wait, this is university study stuff, guy. You know, where's the trace of custody? He said, well, I gave it to Brian Sykes. I don't know where it is now. And it's like, well, you gave it to the one person overseas who you're told not to give it to, and nowhere overseas. Yeah, well, and he just shrugged it off, didn't know where it went. And then has the audacity to refer to us as unprofessional, unscientific, and that we don't have quantifiable information or data. But this is the same person who just gave away and lost all the DNA evidence to a university level study, effectively stopping the study. So,
by the way, I heard that claim indirectly from someone else that was talking to him and said that he had actually sent the samples to Dr. Sykes.
Yeah.
And Sykes claimed that he lost them somewhere.
Yeah, and you're right, University of Oxford, London, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Sykes does everything through the Museum of Zoology in Lausanne, Switzerland, the absolute best at DNA, at zoologic DNA sampling and studying. They didn't lose anything. And I guarantee he never sent them over there. And so
let me also mention this. I've had Rich Soul on my show before, and he's one of the people that was working with Dr. Burtsev and some of the Russians to identify the MUC7E ghost gene as a possible marker for still extant Bigfoot DNA because of the weird connections possibly to Xana and her offspring. And, you can do eDNA with that. You could take environmental DNA and you could do a test and see if there's MUC7E in there. Well, right. This has been around for 5 years now. Why has Mr. Doctor not mentioned this?
Oh, well, there's a lot of things that aren't getting mentioned. What I was flabbergasted about is after that terminated, all of the sudden, even though that the pro didn't say a word about the study, it was basically kept under wraps. No one talks about it. Yet the local news did an investigative report, special investigation, 28 minutes long or whatever, into the fraud conducted in guys at the University of New Mexico Gallup by a group studying a mythical creature and spending university funding. Now, this is interesting because the entire study, we paid out of pocket. We spent over $7,000. We out of pocket. We were the key research team. We were in charge of all that. Okay, so by the time the news got a hold of it, they said that university funds had been spent on the study, and that was a blatant lie. They had spent university monies on the conference at the university for faculty that was to give the results of the study. Now, this is pretty interesting when it comes down to catch on this on the end part. So what it was discretionary funds. So the executive director talked to everybody in the university, and instead of doing pizza parties, painting banners, painting the school symbol in the parking lot, or other things that you do with discretionary funds, they're up to your discretion. They're for school spirit, they're for whatever. The school and everyone collectively decided, hell yeah, let's do the Bigfoot conference. We'll use the discretionary money instead of wasting it on a giant pizza party. We'll do this conference and do a regular academic presentation and works. And that's how it happened. Yet the news and everybody, and I mean a lot of pros and everybody around it, So the news actually had a pro from a group called New Mexicans for Scientific Reasoning. These are all scientists. They're Los Alamos Labs, Sandia, Kirtland Air Force Base, and University of New Mexico, retired and active scientists in all kinds of fields: biology, molecular biology, astronomy, zoology, and these different aspects were all in a tent. Well, they had their top guy as their skeptic, saying this is all a fraud. Doesn't exist, and their clincher was there's no evidence came out of it. Where's the DNA evidence? If they had any, if it was a real study, where's the evidence? Which was conveniently lost by the doctor, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was funny that was lost, and yet that was the clincher, because they didn't know that we were ever supposed to have any evidence. Not every study is going to have physical evidence. You might just be studying behavior based on vicariously through trace evidence, right? That could still be a study. But yet they already knew that we didn't have something. Okay, so which was a really, really interesting. And then when we talk about the levels this goes to, directly behind it, a state senator actually wrote up a bill and proposed law to block any study into mythical creatures. So it's interesting, the game being played here isn't just one little group or one little set. This goes up to state legislature, this goes to national media, and this goes to pro-doctors in the Bigfoot enigma. Now, it's not an accident. These are not quinky dinks here going on between these systems. Now, interesting enough, we got a hold of the key skeptic that they used on the news broadcast. They had our name in it, and they still featured us on video. But I wrote him and told him, look, buddy, arbitrary and capricious interference with economic gain, let alone everything else you just did. And I'm not shy. And if you put my name up in there, I'm going to nail you for slander tomorrow. And we're going to go for the rest of it. And they pulled my name out of everything, but they did leave a couple of video clips of me in it. But they ran the executive director, man, they ran him into the dirt. I mean, it's saying he committed fraud. Basically that we did something, we just said we did something and then stole the money. And they kept saying taxpayer money, taxpayer money, taxpayer money. And in all actuality, most of that money was put up by places like the Rotary Club and things like that for discretionary funds for the college. Mm-hmm. So it's not even taxpayer money. It's so you talk about disinformation and blatant lies across the board. So what I did was I got a hold of their head skeptic, and I went and did a presentation for this peer scientific skeptic group. What they do is take outlandish claims, whether it be for infinite energy, whether it be for whatever it is, UFOs, whatever it is, and they put scientific data to the test. All these scientists come up as a peer group, and they literally ramp at that moment during that event. And during our presentation to them, which was almost 3 hours long, you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, the entire time. No one even had a question, barely even at the end. And what the head of this, Dave Thomas, what he said by the end was, guys, he told his guys, he got up there in front of them all and he said, guys, do you think we could have missed a big hominid? We need to look at this. And then he asked me if he could go out with our team. And he runs a skeptical scientific peer group of some of the best scientists in the world. And it turned him in 3 hours. The evidence turned him around. But it goes to show what we're up against. I was involved in the Oxford study, same thing. Our first sample submitted had no follicle, but it was recovered with other evidence along with it, physical and trace, and it came back unknown. The species was unknown. It couldn't be classified, no recoverable DNA. So they held the Oxford study for 2 months. The study was supposed to be concluded, if everyone remembers, in January. It wasn't concluded until March, because that's how long it took us to get another sample they requested. They held the results of the study. The whole world sat and waited for it, and you were waiting for us. It took 2 months for us to get a hair off a living species, or a living specimen. In other words, it still had a hydrated hair follicle, still wet, still fresh. And we were able to do that, along with over 170 feet print, hand prints, bite imprints, hair, the hair that came with it, and the whole 9 yards. We were able to get all this evidence together with our sample for Oxford. And when that went in, we waited and waited and waited and waited, and that was like 4 more months. And then the testing came out, and they said they had results from a polar bear, which is impossible, and everything else, a possum and all these other things.
Oh, but it was a special Himalayan polar bear that's still alive there in the Himalayas and leaving hair samples inside of hollow trees.
Yep, and leaving hair samples, that is still a bear that any first or second year biology student could have identified and discriminated that out of the study. They should not have studied anything. The only thing in their own study description, I have it, is that everything will be qualified. In other words, we're not going to test anything unless it's an unknown. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, we were the only ones that turned in unknowns. Now, the interesting part is my second sample, the one that they held the whole study for 2 months, they kept the whole world waiting, right?
Damn it, it's all your fault, Rob.
They never tested that sample. It never was tested. So in the study results and the release to the Associated Press, they said we tested all samples. It's right in there. That's a blatant lie. And they said everything came back as a known animal. Well, then why'd you test it if it was a known animal? So, and we already know our first sample came back unknown. So there's another lie. And then we were told that our sample, the last one, is being curated in the Museum of Zoology in Lausanne, Switzerland, for a future study. Now with DNA ages, man, they waited 2 months to get a fresh one, so it would be top notch right there, fully viable. And now they want to put it in a jar and hold it for a future study and let the DNA degrade. Does
not compute.
No, and we've got sample number. I've got a video up on our YouTube channel. It's the Oxford DNA transfer, and you see me transferring the hair in a sealed kit cabinet, pressurized hermetic cabinet into their field kit, so we can have trace of custody. So that's impossible to say it was contaminated or anything else. I mean, every T was crossed, every I was dotted, and I show you the sample number in that video. And, that's the thing, is where's the DNA? And this is what's weird, is I can ask that question to Brian Sykes and all those involved in the OLCHP, the Oxford Lausanne Collateral Hominid Project. I can ask everyone involved in that project, where's the DNA? Where's my sample? Where's the sample that you held and you basically pivoted and focused the entire study on that sample? Where is it? And then we could ask the other pro, right? The other pro that every single person in Bigfoot knows his name. Where's the DNA? Footprint. Yeah. Where is the DNA? Where is it? I handed it to Brian Sykes. That's not good enough. It's called trace of custody. This is a biologic sample in a university level study that has a trace of custody. You don't give it to anybody without a signed for it, whatever. I mean, you buy contacts or whatever, you might send it priority. You could potentially have to sign for it. A registered letter, send a registered letter. You got to sign for it. Why? Because they need a trace of custody. Well, you can't tell. It's not. What I'm trying to say is it's not an accident. These are not accidents. When we have to go to the top docs and say, where the hell's the DNA at? You were given the DNA. You guys aren't a lab on the fringe over here, or an unknown geneticist, or one of the tens of thousands of molecular biologists, or whoever that have picked up a piece of. You guys are the guys. It's like you could go to Macy's and say, where's my Christmas present? They're going to laugh in your face. Or you could go to Santa and say, where's my Christmas present? Santa should know where your present is. If anybody in the world should know, it's Santa, right? Yeah. Yet we go, that's who got the stuff. We go to Santa and he says, I don't know where the present is. I don't know where the present. Why
my elves lost it somewhere? They were all having a meth party and the reindeer stepped on it or something. I don't know.
I'm just Santa Claus. What do I have to do with Christmas? What are you talking about? What are you talking? It wasn't me. It was one of them elves over there.
Yeah, the elves did it.
Yeah, the elves did it. You blame everything on the elves. So, but I mean, this stuff is so blatant. You know, we're crawling around in the middle of it, and it goes right back to where we begin with the conference crowd. The same people we're talking are on the stage, and they're feeding the hope of the populace when they're the ones who prevented the information from ever being ingested, digested, and regurgitated to the populace. They're the ones limiting the truth while they're preventing the truth from being discovered.
Right.
So come on, put 2 and 2 together here, let alone 50 plus 50 here, which is 100. And on a percentage basis, there's nothing left. There is no room to say it's a coincidence.
It's just obvious they don't want a contradictory narrative. And let's get back to Dr. Footprint, who appears quite regularly on MSM shows about Bigfoot, where he charges them a pile of money to give them some advanced questions and then record them in his studio and cut it up and put it in the show. What is he always telling everybody? Well, it's Gigantopithecus.
Yeah.
Have you heard him change his opinion on that, or is he still on that? Because I'd like to point out a few things to Dr. Footprint, one of which is that, first of all, assuming that there even is or was a Gigantopithecus, everybody is now assuming that it was a gigantic orangutan-like ape. Those are pongids. They have a divergent toe that looks like a hand. So at what point does the morphology of an orangutan conveniently start looking like a human just to suit your ridiculous theory, Dr. Footprint?
Well, how about this? Like we've done already, right? And we'll show that too. We'll show that picture, that quote from the curriculum, modern curriculum for anthropology. One of their main books is called Through the Lens of Anthropology. And it states clearly that if it is a biped and it's a primate, it is a human, period.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a primate that's bipedal, it is a human. Then it says, and it probably wants to be left alone, which again is correct, right? But the whole point is modern anthropology does not, and this is about Bigfoot. Modern anthropology does not see Bigfoot as anything less than a human, period. Doesn't even entertain the idea. Matter of fact, it dispels the idea and makes the difference clear by stating that out of 500 primate types, humans are the only biped primate, period. And that if a primate is bipedal, it is human. Now, why does Dr. Foot, whatever, even say great ape? Anything off the ape tree, which would be an orang. People don't come off the same tree. We may have way back when, but that's why we are a hominin. They don't know where we actually came off that tree. That date's being pushed farther back all the time when it went divergent, and there's no direct link between the hominid and the hominin.
Right.
You know,
and the other thing to consider here, though, is that out of any of the available known extant species of apes, they all have the divergent toe. In other words, their foot is like a human hand is. Their foot is not built anything like ours is. And why would you expect that any of these ape or ape relatives would somehow suddenly develop a foot that looks like a human foot? That doesn't make any damn sense.
Right. Yet
chimps, gorillas, orangutans, all of them.
Now, when we go let's look at Australopithecus and them. They had different looking appendages and things, and they were, I don't know what Homo florensis's feet were like. I don't know if they know it, probably not, what Homo florensis's feet were like. But humans can be really crazy, and we can even have a divergent big toe like that. Those guys in Africa have something similar to that. Yeah. And they basically have a hand on their foot. But even at that rate, it still isn't the same type of mechanism as a great ape is. It's still different. Basically, it's a human edition of a grasping foot, if you kind of get what I'm saying. So we could evolve to have a grasping foot like that, but would it even look like the great apes? And apparently, if you look at the guys in Africa over there, no, it wouldn't. It's different. It's similar to a human foot, but split. down the middle.
You don't even need that much, dexterity with your toes. I can pick up a cigarette butt or a pencil with my toes, and I don't have to have a divergent toe like an ape to do that.
Well, I mean more like, hang from a branch with your foot.
That you need, yeah. You've got to have the grasping hand on your foot.
Right. And a ring can do that. Most of them can do that.
Yeah.
And that is the difference. But when we talk about what, scientific hoopla, regulatory terminology be putting and creating arguments and creating rift in the Bigfoot field. So let's say I say, okay, well, they can't have tapered toes, but it's got tapered toes. It's not a Bigfoot. And then you have 40 researchers out there in the field, midwinter, middle of nowhere, finding feet print in the mud that are tapered, and Bigfoot sightings and whatever. The thing is, though, that no one's revising the understanding based on the research. They're just sticking with this opinion by these people who are knowingly and can be proven lying to the populace. Because I guarantee you, Dr. Foote does not conclude that these things are any form of a great ape, period. Evolved or not, it doesn't matter. A great ape doesn't evolve into a human. It's never happened in the entire tree. Nothing on the ape side ever came to a human. We split before that, which is interesting. I mean, that's like chimps, 25 million years or something. I mean, that line goes way, 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 way back. And yet we still have modern chimps. They're not gone because they evolved out into something that went away. They're still there because we cracked off of their side. We cracked off of that tree if we did it all.
If we did it all. Let me point out something recently that since they've been doing more study on sea mammals, everybody always says that, well, chimpanzees have 98% of the same DNA as humans do, right? Actually, dolphins have more DNA in common with humans than chimpanzees do.
Yeah, you should see even not more than, but you should see a cat, how much a cat has, or a cauliflower.
Yeah. Well, as far as that goes, you can also reverse that one and go, a banana has 97% of the same DNA as a human too. It's how it's arranged that makes a difference. So that's a disingenuous answer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and when you're talking the chromosomal structure, a dolphin is closer to human than a great ape.
Yep.
Yeah, they have all the same chromosomes that we do. Yeah.
And how peculiar is that?
I think a beluga whale does too, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. Sea mammals that somehow are more related to us than chimpanzees are, yet somehow we're related to chimpanzees. Well, yeah, hold on, dude. And that's the perennial issue there. The people that are actually out there that are getting the good evidence and stuff are generally being ignored, and the ones that are running around doing a lot of self-promotion because they're trying to make money on it. They're the ones that are getting all the attention, sucking all the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah, and I don't think that's an accident, to be honest. I mean, what you do when you want to keep the information under wrap is you put someone in that position to be the person that gives the answers. So you make sure you know what the answers are going to be to the people, and and you can always tell because it's very simple. Science is not a limiting discipline. Okay, science never limits anything. And it never works on we know or we don't know. Or I should say it always works on we don't know, but that's not quite true. What it does is it's a statistical system. So once something breaks a certain level of statistical odds in one favor or another, we call it true or false if it doesn't meet that. So basically, it's like a repetition and experiment. How many times you have to repeat the experiment and get the same result before the result is actually your result. Okay, so we declare where that line is. We make that line arbitrarily. We decide, what are the odds? Is it 10,000 to 1, 1,000,000 to 1, 1,000,000,000,000 to 1? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when we see like any of this limiting stuff, like, oh, well, a Bigfoot foot can't be tapered. Well, what are the odds that it could or couldn't be? If we factor in everything, it certainly should be, because we know it's a bipedal primate, and we know that all bipedal primates are human. We know that all humans had a tremendous amount of foot diversity since day one, even within the same species, let alone anything that's hybridized or anything like that. So So if we look at each of their own factors based on science, it actually serves to validate, not to discredit, which is interesting. Now,
Sure, individual variation, and that absolutely makes sense that you're going to find different individuals. Blaine Tyler found a track one that's got a messed up foot, very weird, crippled foot. He's had multiple examples of the same track. He even casted one of them. Doesn't look anything like a normal Bigfoot foot. If you
yeah,
hadn't seen its other foot, you'd be wondering what the hell you were looking at. Its other foot was normal.
yeah, we've got one that's got a left foot that's like that. It's been busted, and it's instead of being this way, it's like this way.
Yeah.
So forward and then side, where the whole foot was broken sideways at one point or another. It was pretty mangled.
Man, I bet that.
I'll bet, and it looks pretty bad, and we've seen that for years. But you know, that's kind of what I want people to understand, to notice, is science doesn't say something doesn't exist. Science doesn't say it can't get bigger than this. Science doesn't say anything like that ever in the world. Never does that. So it will tell you that the max size reported, suspected, blah, like that. But anytime you hear somebody say, oh, it's over 18 inches, it's fake. Oh, if the heel's narrow, it's fake. Oh, if it shows an arch, it's fake. Oh, if it doesn't show a mid-tarsal break, it's fake. This is the thing. That's not a scientist talking.
No.
That is someone with an agenda talking, because science doesn't do that. Period, base, period. Science is a study of the unknown, not knowns. So we are dealing in a world of unknown. That's why we are conducting science, right? Because it's unknown. If it was so known, like he's saying, well, then we wouldn't even be asking questions, would we? I mean, right?
And real science should be about, you have a theory. How do I test this theory? And when you test it, does it repeat? Right. Testing the theory repeatedly and getting the same answer over and over again, that is the basis of science.
Yeah. You know, we have far more, by far, probably 300 or 400 times more tapered Bigfoot prints by excellent field trackers than we do the block square tope type.
Yeah.
The only place I've ever even seen those come from is the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
I've never seen one like that. I have a 22 or a 23-inch print cast, and it's not like that. Matter of fact, it has exactly the same bone morphology of prints that we have that are 8 inches long.
Yeah. Same 14, thing we're seeing over 15. Here, although we've had everything from like 7 inches up to 21 inches, and they've all got that nice little angle across the front from the hallux down to the little toe to varying degrees. Some of them are kind of rounded across, some of them are straight across. The only one that we've seen is straight across, we're fairly convinced isn't a Bigfoot track, because it was 4 equal-sized toes. It was about 25 inches long, and we're assuming it was a mountain giant track. We don't go in that area anymore.
Right. Well, you never know. I mean, you never know.
Yeah, those things eat people, so we don't go in that area anymore. But yeah, that's another thing where it's like they're very rarely found, but the tracks tend to be titanically huge. Never shows a hallux. It's 4 toes, generally straight across the front. And they're all about the same size. So having seen that a few times in pictures, I went, yeah, we're not going in this area anymore.
Well, you know, I mean, that's basically the kind of shape foot they show for Patty. Mm-hmm. And who knows, you know, I know, but if you look at a diagram of human beings' feet, they actually have the same variations. So you can find people that have feet just like Patty's, and you can find people that have big, long, tapered feet. Yep. And in the same family group, we see, well, there is some, even in prints that don't look that much alike, we can measure the bone placement and they match. It's the same morphology, but the subject may carry the foot differently. One has a lot more weight than the other one. Like Patty's foot looks like, well, what we see for most of the big females' feet. They're not doing the kind of crap that the males are doing. The male's foot is very tenuous usually. It can have a brutal pad structure and all that, but generally not fatty. And like we look at Patty's feet, they're kind of fatty. And the female we have at GLST, her feet are kind of fatty like that. The younger ones aren't, they're thinner, but hers are. But like the big male, it's not. You can see the tendons in the feet, you know. You can see the cuts and division in the pad and how the toes are doing a lot more than just basically in one position walking every day, kind of blah, 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 blah. You can tell the toes are always hyperextended and more finger-like and held in weird positions or things like that. So
some of the tracks we found, we basically decided, in some cases we figure we can tell what gender they are because some of the bigger females, they've got a banana-shaped foot because they've got that wider hip structure, and the way they're throwing their leg around tends to make that more banana-shaped female foot. And there's human females that have that too.
Well, yeah, and it's basically the way they hold their feet when they put them on the ground.
Yeah.
When you don't have as tough a foot, then you'll actually walk that way. So it's funny because people go, "Oh, it's so weird how they'll plant real lightly on the heel and mostly on the forefoot instead of just planting the heel." You know what's weird is every person that takes their shoes off that has to go run across the driveway, watch what they do. They walk exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. Because if you plant your heel, if there's even a tiny little pebble or anything else,
it's stabbing you.
It's stabbing you, and it hurts like hell. And we all know that we can soft walk by placing all the weight on the full foot flat or on the fore part of the foot and get around that. And so you see everybody doing that. And then you say, well, people go, well, and they don't undulate. They move real fluidly and they don't undulate. Put a guy in a real heavy pack and go walking and watch what happens, especially after a few hours. You don't walk like this with a heavy pack on. You learn to go like this, to where your transition is like this. It's not up and down every step because you're going to kill yourself with the weight of the pack. Right. These are now, and then that changes, of course, the morphology of the foot over generations, and you end up with exactly what we see in the locomotion of a Bigfoot foot. It just comes from being that heavy. They don't sway their weight because stopping sway at 800 to 2,000 pounds or more takes a lot of force just to stop the sway each time. And you don't bounce it because every time it comes down, you have to stop additional weight, not just your weight, but maybe 30 or 40% more than your weight if you're walking hard is coming down. So you can't walk like that. You have to walk foot over foot because if you're like a duck like we are, we sway. Just too heavy.
The straddle step. You can even tell when you're following a trail of somebody in the woods if they're a woodsman or if there's somebody that lives in the city just by looking at the way the feet are placed, because people that are used to walking around in the city, they don't lift their feet up very high because there's no obstructions. They're not going to stub their toe. So they're not used to doing that high leg lift, and consequently they'll be kicking little stuff in the underbrush around that somebody that's an experienced woodsman won't.
Right. And you can even, if you really get down into it, you can tell the difference between a football player and a soccer player. So soccer players are always pigeon-toed. It has to do with the way you operate on a soccer field. And if you ever really take notice and watch soccer players and how they walk, they don't walk like a football player does. And you grow that way. Your muscles get that way, so you walk that way, and you can definitely see the difference. Most people never put their foot forward when they walk. Most people always have their foot cantered to the side a little bit, but yet some people don't. Like I said, soccer players, most of them walk with their feet straight forward. Baseball players, another one. You can tell by the way a baseball player walks that they're a baseball player. And it's the same thing with the Bigfoots. If you have a subject that's out doing this and that and running and doing all these other things, then you have another subject that's basically staying low and hanging with the family group, moving from point A to point B, soft terrain, flat terrain. Their feet aren't going to look the same. No. And because they're not going to use their feet the same way. It's like I tell people all the time, what is a Bigfoot handprint? Does it look like this? Does it look like this? Does it look like this when they're moving? Not usually. Usually it looks like this right here, and not this part, just the pinky here to this round. It looks like a paisley shape.
Right.
That's what you look for, because they're generally on the sides of their hand. People say, well, why would they walk like that? I tell them, get on all fours and walk around. Watch what you do.
Yeah.
Because that takes the most amount of damage. You can have thorns and stickers and all kinds of stuff here, and they're not on your grasping area. They're nowhere like that. And so we tend to walk that way. We tend to crawl that way. We tend to put contact on the ground in the parts that we need the least, that are the least sensitive, and things like that. So that's why, You know, it's easier to walk on your knuckles than it is on your fingers. Well, it's not hard to tell that the difference on that either. You can take a needle and just touch the back of your hand with a needle, and then turn it around and do the front and watch the difference. Because our hands are built to be sensory apparatuses. We don't want to put this down because this is highly sensitive, and the back isn't. The back is built to be abraded, and it's very difficult to tell a pinpoint area on the back of your hand. It's like in your back. I have somebody put one finger on one side of your back and then two fingers like that, separated about 2 inches on the other side of your back. You can't tell which side is one finger or two, because there's no reason for your back to have a nerve structure like that. There's no reason for it to know that big a difference. And so you can't tell on your back. Your back isn't wired that way. But your front is. You can tell on your front. So because this is softer, this is built to be protected. This is built not the thing that's exposed. Yeah. And so we look at their feet and their hands and the way they walk. That's why they move the way they move. It's like people say, oh, well, it tucks the rear toe. It wears boots. You know, I've got that a lot from like 13-inch feet. And I tell them, man, it's not wearing boots. Look at the toes so you can tell that's worn boots all of its life. Really, I want to watch you go walk around. Go ahead. Go out where there's grass and there's stuff and just go walk through it. And what you'll find is that everybody will tuck their toe when they do that, because you inherently know you could snag your little toe. And that's what we do when we're trying to protect our feet when we walk. And it's funny because our 23-inch track has its little pinky toe tucked over its other toe. It's 23 inches long.
There's somebody that smacked his pinky toe into a boulder at one point and went, "Oh, that hurt."
Yeah, like anybody would that lived out there, man. You got a little bitty toe hanging off the side of your foot that if you snag it, you know, you could you'd be lame. Well, it's like that. So they carry their pinky toe. Well, so everyone says, oh, yeah, that's boots. Where is the 23-inch boot that deformed that foot over years of wearing a boot? Where is this guy from? Yeah. Nobody on earth has a 23-inch foot guy. They never built a boot that big. Nope. So you see the argument, every single argument being pushed to us by those in the know don't hold any water. I mean, at all, and it's not hard to actually discredit that argument. It's actually fairly simple. I want to bring up Kenneth Collins because he's a guy in the Midwest who has found literally almost carbon copies of what we find in our GLST group, right down to the differences in shape and size in the subjects. I mean, you can actually lay his group's tracks next to our group tracks, and you can't tell the difference a little bit per subject. But you're seeing the same identical things. Yet he's been told by everybody, those aren't Bigfoot tracks. We've been told by everybody, those aren't Bigfoot tracks, including Dr. Bigfoot, by the way.
Dr. Footprint.
Yeah, and Dr. And this is the funny part, too, because what he said to me was, well, if you really want to know what they're from, why don't you track them and see where they go? We have. You know where they go?
To Bigfoot.
Yeah, right to a Bigfoot. Not to a cave or up to a mountain. If you follow them far enough, they go to a Bigfoot. We have done it. So
what's making them a Bigfoot? That's what they go to.
Mama's tracks are 20 inches, so they must be fake. Right on. Cool.
Mama's big.
Yeah. Maybe there's a bunch of wild, fake big feet out there.
Yeah.
Right? They're all fake. They're just wild, feral, fake Bigfoots. That's what they are.
They're just giant mountain hippie nudists. That's all it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Ninja nudists.
Giant mountain hippie ninja nudists. That's what's going on there. It's not actually an unknown hominin.
No, they speak Russian.
Yeah. Well, no wonder we can't understand that samurai chatter. They're speaking in Russian. But the Russians can't understand it either, so I don't think that's...
It's because they're not drunk.
Oh, that's it. You got to be drunker to understand.
Both people have to be drunk to understand,
so... good stuff. I wasn't expecting you to be cracking me up, Rob. You're so Mr. Science all the time.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I get lucky every once in a while.
Lucky.
Get late at night, I'm just getting goofy. No.
Well, was there anything else that we wanted to cover on this one? The only thing I'd like to mention, other than what we brought up so far, is that it isn't just the academic types or the government knobs that are involved in this. There's also groups out there and or shows that I absolutely believe are being paid to be out there spreading disinformation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When you've got guys from the CIA from years ago who are now retired, who are doing who are doing interviews saying, I was the guy that took duffel bags of money to producers, to newsreaders, which it used to be journalists, now they're newsreaders. But he says, yeah, I would go all over the country and pay the media, pay the people. I was the guy that handed duffel bags of cash. Well, and he's got credible, and he's credible. He's got credible credentials. So you're thinking, well, that's cool. You're him, but who were all the people who took the cash? These were all the people we're hearing about. You know, you don't,
quote unquote journalists.
Yeah. Well, you know, everything went pretty well underground in 1974 regarding the species. That's when they nipped everything off. They just trimmed everything off. We had up till 74. They trimmed it off, and then they started to go back and reinterpret the rest. And if you look, that's when some of these guys who today are the ones telling us the reality. That's when they got involved.
And don't forget, you can follow the paper trail. Go look it up. There's this thing called Operation Mockingbird. CIA is paying the mainstream media to regurgitate whatever talking points they think are necessary to keep pushing the narrative in the direction they want it to go. And that's well known. It's been going on since the 1960s. All the mainstream media are involved.
Yeah. And those that are on the mainstream media most of the time.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. Some of those big MSM outlets are having problems right now. The Charlatan News Network is having excessive problems right now. They keep losing people.
We'll see what happens. It's. I mean, this is supposed to be, like I said, the age of enlightenment and the big awakening. So, can't expect to not get knocked backwards. You know, but like I said, anybody that feels that they're trying hard, they're making waves and they're getting nowhere. Just remember, neither did Galileo, Copernicus, or anybody else. You know what the pros of the time told them.
Yeah.
You know, you're full of shit. So,
well, the tide is turning too. There's more people that are being more and more open-minded about the whole subject. And one of the things that's noticeable on that in the last 5 years is in the community, it's gone from, if you think there's any degree of woo involved, you're completely lunatic, to now about half the community is going, wait, there might be some paranormal stuff going on here. Because we keep seeing weird stuff all the time, and we don't know for sure what's going on there, but maybe we should take a look at it. Whether it's going on or not, that to me is heartening because they're willing to take a look at it finally.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that the same thing with science. Science is the study of the unknown. Most of the paranormal stuff is unknown, yet science doesn't study it. People are making determinations without even understanding if they even have a clear frame of mind, or if their frame of mind is being manipulated by something else, or if that thing's even a monkey, or if it's even there. And this is how, if without understanding those forms of psychology, and then a person has to have an absence of fear to be clear-minded. And all these people go out there and say, I'm not scared. And that's complete bull crap. That's because you're not around them. 1 in 10,000 men will hold his ground around a real Sasquatch, really right there. 1 in 10,000 men is going to hold his ground. 1 in 1 million won't experience some form of fear that can be dispelled by logic. Okay, or will experience, well, yeah, won't. Because that is how often people can actually take their ego or their fear out of a situation. 1 in a million, maybe. That's why, that's what the old thing is, the old adage, in order to find, you must first stop looking. That doesn't mean you're not searching. Looking means you have a preconceived idea of what you're looking for. You cannot find anything you preconceive, then it's not being discovered. You've already conceived it. So the only way to discover something inconceivable is to be able to search without conception. Do you understand? So you can't color the information. So if someone says it stepped into another world, Okay, well, you saw it disappear. Yeah, I saw it vanish right before my own eyes. Okay. Did you see the other world? Oh, no, but if it stepped out of here, it must have gone to another world. So it stepped into another world. And
You
in
don't
order
know that.
right, and in order to do that, you need some kind of a window that I'll call a portal.
Hmm.
You don't know that either.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about, though.
You know.
In this case, I don't make any preconceived notions, even based on my own sensory perception. It's hard evidence. And when you have pictures of things bending the light around them,
Yeah, but
that's
you know
not
what?
your perception. That's the
But what
camera
can do?
taking a picture of it.
But what can do that?
Yeah,
So
exactly. What can do it?
okay,
And there's
so
a couple of options. First of all, I know we have the technology to do that with
absolutely.
equipment that will bend the light around you. So here's your two options. Either there was some sort of entity following us that could bend the light around it, because it was directly behind the person that turned around and snapped the picture with their cell phone, or it was somebody with one of those camouflage suits. Now, since the picture with the object bending the light around it has a clearly defined and obvious Sasquatch head peeking around from a tree about 30 feet behind it, I lean heavily towards Sasquatch as the explanation. Do I know it
See,
was bending the light around it? No. But if
right.
it's a guy in a military suit, he ain't going to be right there with another Sasquatch right behind him.
Now, why wouldn't a Sasquatch be following a guy in a military suit and a group of people?
Well, there's only two of us. There was nobody else
You know,
there.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if there was anybody doing ops with gear like that, it would be more likely, if there was a Sasquatch in the area, that it's going to be ghosting him
Hmm.
than less
In
likely.
fact, there were actually three that were also there that we spotted.
So, and that's kind of
The
what
chances that there's
I'm
going to be a
talking-
lone guy in a military spec suit wandering around there by himself with three Sasquatch trailing him and he's following us, how infinitesimally small do you think that is, Rob? Let's be realistic.
Actually, in all actuality, I still think it's, if you were to do the math on it, it's still higher likelihood than it was one of the Sasquatch doing it.
Man, I disagree.
well,
Let's just leave it there because I ain't
Yeah.
buying it. We've got examples of other people I know that are carrying EM meters around with them and they fire off randomly for no damn reason.
Yeah, I
And
know.
it's the same
thing.
time they're getting jammed and they're hearing roars and they're catching them on video. So I don't buy it. I'm seeing plenty of evidence that there is a paranormal connection. But,
Well,
hey, you got your opinion, I got mine.
And this is what I was kind of saying about the deal. To even say the word paranormal, I don't believe anything that we're talking about is paranormal because we can all do it. So there was a preacher in Russia who preached over 600 miles away in two churches on the same day every single day.
Right.
And no one knew how he got from one church to another.
Mm-hmm.
So is it normal or paranormal? This is kind of what I mean. People
It's a terminology discussion here. What we're talking about is your label of paranormal essentially means that science does not have a clearly defined rationale or methodology for describing this particular phenomenon. So therefore, it is currently consumed or presumed to be paranormal. It's
Right.
something we don't understand. We don't have the nomenclature or terminology to describe this weird phenomenon. So therefore, right now it's paranormal. That doesn't mean it's not normal. It means we can't describe it.
Well, see, and that's what I'd like to erase, because we can't describe how yogurt can communicate over 1,000 miles instantaneously on the quantum level, to where there's absolutely no delay. That we describe that with particle physics, we describe it with string theory, we describe it in a lot of ways, but we can't understand it whatsoever in any field. Yet they do it, but we don't call it paranormal. But if you take a human and you do the very same thing with the human, we call it paranormal.
Yeah.
That is what's hiding the truth from us, is the title paranormal. The moment they tell you it's not normal, it's abnormal, it goes into mythical. That's why this gets taken down. This is eventually, I'll go through this with you. There is a large campaign, and it's at least 40 years. There's information, disinformation, then there's what's called counter disinformation. Okay, and so in everything you're hearing and seeing that's being shown to us, we're seeing two lies and a truth, or two truths and a lie. So there's a kernel of truth to every single thing, and there's a portion of a lie to every single thing. And this is how the information gets dispelled. So what we do is we create paranormal. So if you go to the Aborigines in Australia and you talk about mind reading or mind speak, right, and you call it paranormal, they'll go, what? Because that has been made that way by the European doctrine.
Yeah, to them it's normal. It's normal, but we think it's paranormal.
Now, it doesn't get studied because it's titled paranormal. So nobody wants to touch it. So if you don't want something studied and you want to hide it or hide its reality, you develop a title that will then cause no one to touch it. So so this is what I'm saying. Nothing we're experiencing is abnormal, paranormal, or beyond the realm of possibility for anything. So what we need to do, just as a whole, though, in any scientific term, is take the knowns versus the unknowns. If it walks and quacks like a duck, whatever. So no matter how preponderous something is, if it's the only solution, it's most likely the solution.
Occam's razor.
Yeah. So if you know. So that's why when we apply science to this stuff, if we know a way of something occurring, I won't attribute it to something else that would be a farther grip, let's say, or you'd have to go out with an entirely new. You just have to go into all this fiction basically to justify one or another based on, hey, this happens for real. So to think, I know for a fact there's Oriental tactics to make you see a man disappear. What he's doing is he's controlling your mind to make you see him vanish. That doesn't mean he vanished, and people can do this to this day. So they can a man dressed in black and hide in a white hall, and no one will see him. And these are what the old tales of all the ninjas and stuff. Well, the shaman and all the native tribes could do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so when that's what I mean about the witness. Does the witness understand themselves? So when the ships showed up, when Pizarro, his ship showed up on the coast in South America, the natives could not see the ships. 2 or 3 hours went by, even though they're sitting right there in the bay and Spain could see them, they could not see them. Their mind filtered them out. Between their eyeballs and their brain, the ships were not there. They could not see them. It took 2 or 3 hours before their filter in their mind would put the ship in the picture. So just like a hallucination, to solve the image that's being built by your brain, to solve that image and all the parameter and all the problems in that image, your mind builds an image for you. If there's something in that is recondite to the brain, it will often remove it from the picture. And people don't know this occurs. Now, when we say, well, how can we inspire something on a camera, digital or film? Well, people have photographed mental apparitions. So there has been people over time who could put an image on film directly from their mind. Have you ever seen that done?
Oh, yeah.
So in the 70s, that was being done on Polaroid, where they would literally put the picture of what was in the mind and cast it onto the Polaroid film. Okay, so when we're talking, these are the knowns. These are knowns, right? These things have been tested. So when if we take all the knowns and start to factor them in, then we get all kinds of ideas that could be more likely than what a lot of people are witnessing. Even if it is a Bigfoot a shaman of their tribe, the elder of their tribe or whatever, may very well be able to make himself vanish to you. But I've seen people that can see things. One guy can see it and another guy cannot. And they're standing side by side.
Yeah.
And so
that's why I trust the camera more than my own perception. When the camera shows light bending around something's bending light around it.
Right. And you'll see, this is what's interesting too. You'll see ghosts that can be seen by the witness and not the camera. And you'll see ghosts that can be seen by the camera and not the witness.
Yeah. The same thing with orbs too.
Yeah,
there's been people literally like, I can see the orb with my naked eye. I put it up the camera. You can't see it. Or vice versa. You can see it
or vice versa.
Can't see with your eye.
That's why I don't trust a camera any more than I trust my eye. Because the camera is still, it works within its frequency, is within its range. If you go out any outside that, which is even more limited than the human eyeball in most cameras, if you go outside those parameters, everything doesn't exist or it exists anymore. So you don't even have to push anything completely out of this reality. All you got to do is bend it a little bit from the normal reality, its relative nature, and it's gone. And so I like to bring it up because, we have tested a lot of things to the point, and I don't know a lot of people have. I mean, I don't know how many people out there have cornered a Bigfoot on purpose, where it can't leave, right? And
that's kind of a dangerous game, so probably not a lot of people.
We've done it and been hurt as a result, but the point is, it can't leave. And when they're out there in the winter, midwinter, and they've got diarrhea. They can't rectify that. They can't do anything about it. They have to experience it just like you and I do. There's nowhere warm they can just blip off to. They have the runs. They got the runs. The vomiting, we've seen the same thing. And so we've seen a subject that had the runs for 2 or 3 days going with the group, and only them was sick in midwinter and having a hard time. Or they eat sand and algae because there's no food. Yet you talk to other people and they've got a craft sitting there over 100 feet away, over 100 foot. There's a craft that's invisible that they get in and out of. Well, if they did, he wouldn't be out here puking on the riverbed.
Yeah.
And if he had another reality he could step into, he wouldn't be out here in the freezing, damn near dying. Or they wouldn't, when we corner one, if it could result and just disappear at will or do whatever to leave, well, then it would, because right now we've got it screaming, scared as hell, throwing stuff at us, and threatening to bluff charges because we've got him cornered. You know, and it's a very, you know, a nervous, excitable, full PTSD moment going on over there. You know, so I just, you know, and that's, as we get into all these conspiracies, there's going to be a lot of doors open. They're going to hopefully let a lot of people see a lot farther beyond what they're presently looking at. I know, and when you said like the EM meters and all that, I just went through that with Chris Reinhardt. He'll actually be on our expedition with us where we're going, and they have that happen. You know, I mean, I've got a tri-field meter. We've got, you know, everything, and I've used the stuff all the time. It's interesting that RF is a funny thing. So when you stand in your living room and put your arms up and it changes the way your antenna sees your TV, that's because we generate our RF signal all on our own right now. That can be intensified dramatically. There's no telling how intense it could be in a 3,000-pound humanist thing with intent. There's no telling how much RF it could put off.
But you can feel it. I've been close to big
Sure.
ones before, and you can literally feel it. It feels like there's an electrical generator near you somewhere.
I've felt that off big bikers and bars. To walk by and, you know, just power and pray. But this is the broadcast from the spiritual being of its essence. Let's talk about an aura with the human being. They have an energetic field. They measure it now. We know that they have a biofield. They have an energetic field. It's not what you can photograph with Kirlian photography because that's an induced current, but it still plays on the same role. But the aura a person would have, some people have strong auras, some people have weak auras, some people have good auras, some people have bad auras, you know. And so, and we've, through all the cultures in the world, they talk about that. So when we look at an animal like that, well, what's its aura like? What's its aura feel like? We tend to attribute the mystical to things that are beyond our everyday understanding even. And we don't look back and say, wow, I wonder if we're that mystical. We are, you know, people can do telekinesis. They can teleport. They can, matter of fact, a human being, you and I, can do every single thing I've ever heard attributed to a Bigfoot. And probably more so in essence.
If we train long enough and learn how to do it, but that
if we didn't have
takes
ego,
a lot of training.
Actually, it's just, if you can erase your ego, it'll work right now. Just if you just erase the ego, because the ego is what prevents that from happening, because that's what's got your belief factor written up in it. But you know, I was taught to dowse and run a pendulum at early age, and the only way that works is if you drop your ego, because if you tell yourself, if you wiggle the thing yourself, it's not going to give you any accurate.
And false reading,
you know. And that's what the guy taught me was you do it by yourself in a room, and you'll know if you're doing it honestly or not. And if you feel yourself, just put it away. And it's true. If you can almost not give yourself a yes or no answer. It's almost impossible to shut yourself up and make your hand not do that. But if you can not do it, you can ask anything. He's the richest oil and natural gas man in New Mexico. And every well he douses on his table in his kitchen with a map, a ruler, and a pencil, and a pendulum. And he spins a pendulum and tells you when to stop and draw a line. And then he draws one across the other way, and that's a cross. And then he asks and figures out how much natural gas is going to be at how deep and how much oil is going to come out. And he's never wrong. He's always right. He's never wrong. So where does that pinpoint information come from about
Yeah.
how much gas is going to come out before the oil. He's never wrong. He lives in Millinsan down there, and so he's the one that taught me how to dowse, but and how to run that pendulum. But the thing being, what kind of saying is the belief factor in what the brain is and how the brain works and what the brain actually knows versus what it doesn't know, and how it'll fill in gaps and what it does in the presence of fear. Pheromones. People don't know about. They know about pheromones. They don't know about meromones. So pheromones is a sexual attractant. Well, a meromone is what a male puts off to scare another male. The more virulent male will have a stronger meromone signature than a weaker male will. And the weaker male will pick up on that and avoid the fight. Well, it causes intense fear. That is why a man that's got confidence and stride can walk in and intimidate men in a room that don't, not even seeing them, because they are releasing a meromone signature that says, I'll beat you to death. And the other guy's going, mommy, help me, mommy. Okay, so this is, but it's true. This is a chemical release we do. When a male Bigfoot releases meromones, okay, what we're talking about is even in a human, human to human, it can cause shock. It can cause someone to go into shock. Okay, so what could a Bigfoot do to a person?
Right. Just
the meromone release. You talk about, well, I don't know why I was so scared. I was terrified. I couldn't move. He had control of me. I was paralyzed. Mm-hmm. Man, all you got to do is detect that meromone signature and you're going to be paralyzed and just shut down, go full tilt. Some people will, some people won't. So people, well, I'm trying to say is if you don't know about meromones, you think they're having some crazy control over you.
Yeah.
No, it's a biological thing telling you to get the hell out of Dodge. This thing is going to squish you like a bug, man.
And they can.
And they can, absolutely. But I think people need to know more. They need to know schemas. They need to know meromone signatures. They need to know the psychology of the human mind. What causes a hallucination? What does all these things in the brain? What does this? If you don't have all that info, you don't have a fair shot when you go out there. You're like fodder because you're going to be a victim of whatever it is. It's like the David Pilates thing. Do I think that Bigfoot's taking everybody? No, absolutely not. The reason I don't think that is because I know there's a bunch of crap out there.
Amen, brother. And that's something a lot of people need to figure out. Bigfoot ain't the only thing out there. And some of that other shit is way more hostile and aggressive than they are.
And a lot of it is dirty, nasty, and can trick you.
Uh-huh.
So we don't know what we're seeing when we see something unless we know what we're seeing when we see it. Other than that, it needs to be evidence-based. It needs to be backed up by evidence, what it is and what I saw. Or, I don't know. Today, people have a real hard time putting it in the total gray, I don't know bracket. So, if I see something run by and it looks like a cloaked predator, why would I ever think Bigfoot? Even if it's big old massive thing like that. It could be a big old massive thing like something else and not be a Bigfoot. It could be another form of relic hominin, Denisovan shaman. I don't know what that is. See, that's what we do is we attribute to. We're not comfortable leaving it in the gray and saying, I just don't know. Yeah. So I have like this huge giant bucket of stuff that I don't know. And I do not add it to the stuff that we find through study or like cornering a Bigfoot. What happens when we corner a Bigfoot, that gets written in the book, But all the stuff that happens as a result of what potentially could be, if I thought this or that, I don't put that in that book. That stays over there because that's the only way to get the truth. Right. That's how I figure. That's how I can find treasures. No one's ever found the treasure because they're involved in it. They themselves are involved in it. It's what they think. Well, they think has no bearing on reality. So because you think he would put it by this rock, this tree, because you think he'd stick it under this thing, because you think this, well, where would I put it? That's the least thing you want to do is go, where would I put it if I was a treasure hunter? Because you ain't the guy who buried it.
Right. And the guy who buried it may be thinking, well, if I was a normal guy, where would I put it? I'll put it in the opposite place.
Yeah, or whatever. Or whatever. Or in the place. I mean, so, but we don't know. You have to be able to remove yourself completely from that. And if you don't, you're going to mislead yourself forever. And then the answers come, but they don't come and tell you, pull your opinion the hell out of Dodge. So, that's the thing about opinion. People don't realize there's a big difference between opinion and experience. And even in experience, you form opinion, right? So a science has zero opinion. That's why, like Dr. Footprint, right? His opinion is that they couldn't get over 18 inches. It has no basis in reality whatsoever.
Right.
Science doesn't use opinions at all. Not even a little bit. They have ideas, they base a theory, then they go out and test a theory, which is still backwards.
Yeah.
So you should see sign, what's it declare, and then you study what it declares, and then you look for repetition. That should be the way it goes. Zero opinion, even zero theories, until you've already done the work. You shouldn't have a theory until you've already done the work.
Yeah.
You should not make a theory and then go do the work, because then you're just looking
trying to validate your own opinion rather than actually doing research.
Yeah, in order to start finding, you have to stop looking. Well, you're looking the moment you have a theory, so you're not going to find anything. You're going to discover what you want to see, and then it's going to go through this huge process of hoopla and opinion and everyone else, because everybody can look at the same thing and see two different things. But what it tests to be and what it repetitively tests to be that's your best bet on what it is.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Totally agree. Well, with that, I think we're going to have to wrap up the first episode here because we're at over 2 hours and I have to actually get ready to go do a radio show here shortly.
Nice.
busy day.
That's been good, man.
Wonderful having you on the show. Looking forward to doing the next episode. And we're going to have some other guests on here with us. Me and Rob will both be grilling them. Yep. From different standpoints.
Yep.
And the truth will lie somewhere in the middle, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where it usually ends up being. But yeah, just to let you know, I'm not, I don't draw conclusions out of thin air and very fast. I've been at this over 40 years, and you got to show me a lot of evidence of something weird going on, or I'll even, okay, I've heard this about 50 times now. I'm going to start taking a look at it. I'm that much of a bonehead on it. So Believe me, to get to the point where I'm even willing to entertain, there's weird paranormal stuff going on. I've seen a lot of evidence for it.
Oh, and I'm not saying that. I mean, I had my back broke by a ghost. Literally, I mean, it smashed me, like pulverized me, put me completely through a load-bearing wall when I was 14 years old. So, I'm well aware of all that. I've been around invisible entities, been around shadow entities. Right. I've been around a house full of little alien bastards as they were abducting the buddy and laying next to me.
But I get what you're saying is you don't know just because there's paranormal stuff going on that necessarily Bigfoot is doing it.
Yeah, matter of fact, I see them more often when we really look at evidence. We see them almost as being a victim of it, just like you and I are.
Absolutely, we're getting that too, man. They don't like those little space boys any more than we do. They're getting screwed with, basically.
Well, yeah, they're getting screwed with. That's the thing. And then some of them might be buddies with them, and some of them not. Like, that's why it's just these. Anytime you hear a blatant thing, oh, Bigfoot's an alien. What the hell's an alien, man? Come on. Everything's a freaking alien.
As far as that goes, we're less adapted to live on this planet than Sasquatch are. There's a better chance we're the aliens than them.
Exactly. If you go by the standard, by look, that's exactly right. And it goes that way with everything. Everybody has it's very simplistic view. It's extremely simplistic. So if you even said alien, oh, well, they're from another star. How do you know they're not from 30 million years inside of our own damn planet and doing the same thing, or whatever it may be. But we tend to do that with everything. I don't know why we do that, but we simplify everything.
It's just part of the way we think. We want to compartmentalize things and put them in this little box that we can look inside and go, okay, that's the totality of this thing. And really, that's not the way reality works. Everything overlaps.
Everything overlaps. And there's so much. I guess that's part of the deal. It's like before you know about other forms of human beings, well, then you would never look for the other forms of human beings or expect them to be there, so it screws you over. Yeah. It's like now that we found Denisovan, and you talk about the giants or anything else, well, we've already dug them up. We got them. They're right there. And, oh, they hit them. No, they didn't. There's Denisovan. He's 10 foot tall. He's right there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Anyway.
We've got other fossil remains that, we don't even have the DNA for. Heidelbergensis. Yeah. The remains we got are very robust and large. How big did they get? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You know, that's the thing about Denisovan when they talk about, oh, there was no giants. They were 10 foot tall.
How much more giant do they need to be?
Right. There's never been an 8, you know, there's no race of 8-foot humans or 9-foot humans. Oh, those are giants. No, there was never like that. Denisovan were 10-foot people. They're ancient humans. Yeah. How do you say there's never been an ancient human, a giant ancient human, and then go, hey, check out Denisovan. He's a giant ancient human. How the hell do you do that in the same sentence? That's what they
I think they call it cognitive dissonance, don't they? Isn't that what they're calling it?
Exactly what it is. You bet. That's the whole alien thing. That's why it's all just funny, man. I mean, to me it is. It's really odd. I mean, we've seen so much crap out there that, you know, I just to put 2 and 2 together is pretty. And then you look at where people are going. Most of the people are not going into true wild lands. They're going, you know, and 90%, 95% of the people who are going out are going into areas that at one time or another were completely clear cut. Yeah. And they think it's a forest. Yeah. And it tells you the same thing to what's there. What could be there.
Make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee.